It all started with a very simple idea. Tell the stories of how successful middle market CEOs made it to the corner office. I'm Brant Handley, founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI. We're the USA's premier executive search firm focused exclusively on empowering middle market companies to attract, hire, and retain A players while transforming top executives' careers and lives. ROI's Into the Corner office is dedicated to discovering how middle market CEOs advance their career, and we're making these remarkable and sometimes quite unbelievable stories available to you for the very first time. Listen and learn about the challenges they've overcome, the interesting people they've met along the way, and the lessons learned that steered these executives' unique journey into a middle market corner office of their own. I know you enjoy these CEO stories as much as I've enjoyed recording them. So thank you for listening today. And if you like what you've heard, rate us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm looking forward to you joining me on the next great middle market CEO adventure into the corner office. My guest today is Tom Foster, founder and CEO of Strapworks. Strapworks was founded in 1976 as a rafting supply company specializing in straps. They were the first company to truly offer any length and any color for any strap their customers needed. Unfortunately, in 1991, Strapworks offices were broken into and the company almost went bankrupt, but recovered from that tragedy. In 2005, they moved into their first 3,000 square foot warehouse with 3 employees, and today they're located in a 60,000 square foot warehouse with over 60 employees. Over the years, they've worked with over 400,000 customers in every industry, on every continent, and even in space. They supply straps to the International Space Station. Strapworks takes pride in being the only U.S.-based manufacturer truly offering strap customization from quantity 1 to over 100,000 and anything in between for everyone, business or individual. Tom Foster, welcome into the corner office.
Thank you very much, Brant.
Great to have you here. And, we spoke, I guess, back in August. We're recording this just a few days before Thanksgiving. And, it brought back fond memories. I think I told you I'm an Oregon Duck, and I get back to Eugene once a year for a football game. Unfortunately, not this year, right? I think Autzen Stadium. Do they have the stand-ups there, Tom? What do they do for the games?
They do have some stand-ups in the end zones, and it's kind of eerie to watch a home game. Yeah. It's just not right.
Well, they've had a tough year, so I guess it just shows how much the crowd really influences the Mighty Ducks, doesn't it?
Yep.
Well, listen, let's start with just checking in on you. When we last spoke, it's hard to say we were in the middle of the pandemic. I think the middle keeps moving, but it sounds like you were doing fine at the time. Give us a little update. How are you, your family, and your colleagues doing through this interesting and sometimes challenging times?
Well, the family is fine.
Great to hear.
And we are a family-owned and operated business. So right. My daughter works here, my son-in-law, my daughter-in-law. Now, my son passed away last year.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So he's no longer with us. Yeah. And then, of course, my wife and I. And we have escaped any of the really bad stuff regarding COVID. Of course, we're all bored to tears because we can't go anywhere.
And importantly, no duck games, right?
Other than work. But as far as work is concerned, we've had a few scares, if you will. Relatives of employees have tested positive,
right.
And some relatives have had symptoms but ended up becoming negative. So we've escaped it here in the factory, though.
Glad to hear it.
We are, of course, doing an awful lot of the CDC as well as Oregon OSHA recommended procedures, 6 feet apart.
Yeah,
Everybody does wear a mask in the factory.
Good.
And so we're taking precautions where we can. Business has actually grown.
Wow.
And we found this true first in the recession of 2008 and 9.
Right.
So many people lost jobs, and they just started up little cottage industries. And since we cater to that a great deal,
right,
business just exploded. Well,
wow.
When this happened, it was certainly different. It wasn't a recession by any means. And we didn't know what to expect. But because we pivoted quickly, and I know people hate that word, but we really did. We pivoted into selling predominantly mask supplies, especially elastic and cord
Straps
locks.
and so forth.
And
Yeah,
in 3 months, I sold over 1 million yards of elastic and over 2
Wow.
million cord locks, more than I had sold in the previous 20 years.
Wow.
Now, after that initial kind of shock wave of activity, our normal customers started coming back.
Coming back. Yeah.
They were ordering as regularly as they did previously. Some were ordering more, also in response to the pandemic. So it seems like industries that have been either on the front lines or into emergency services, things of that nature, have thrived during the pandemic.
Right.
And that certainly includes us. We supply the people who kind of are on the front lines and out there in the trenches. So it's actually been good for us. But we certainly have our reservations in the sense that every day we have to be very vigilant, very alert, remind our employees not to do silly and stupid things outside work.
Right.
So it keeps moving along. And we're very encouraged to hear the news of the vaccines.
That's right.
We do flu shots here every year. The company pays for them. And we intend, it's our understanding that the COVID vaccines will be free.
That's right.
But at the same time, if there are expenses, we'll cover that. And while we can't demand it, we're certainly encouraging that everybody participate and that we get it to a point where, at least within the confines of our building here, we really don't have to worry much about it.
Well, that's great. And congrats on the pivot and obviously becoming an essential industry in many ways, right? And preparing all the information there. Well, let's start talking a little bit about your early years. Are you an Oregonian by birth or are you a migrant? And tell us where you grew up and your early family life.
I'm a migrant, just like more people than who would admit.
Most Oregonians.
Exactly. But I was born in Miami, Florida.
Okay.
My parents owned a bar and a restaurant and ran charter boats out of Haulover docks.
Oh, right.
And so I was kind of a boat rat for my young years and went out every day fishing. And then my parents got divorced and Mom and the kids moved to Oklahoma.
Oh, wow.
And we became farm kids at that point in time. Grew up on a farm.
Big difference.
In my formative years, I guess you would say. And when I was a senior in high school, my stepdad at that time was involved in aviation.
All right.
He had helped develop and market the Jet Commander. And so that was bought out by an outfit in California. So we ended up moving to California.
Wow.
That's where I met my wife.
Country. Yeah.
And went to college, went to UC Davis.
Yeah.
And got into rafting, got into the need to make straps and and have straps. And then
was up in the American River, I guess, right?
Yes, that's exactly right.
I used to take my older kids up there all the time, and boy, I really loved doing all those 3s and 4s. I think there's a 5 or 2 as well, depending on the time of year.
Well, not on the South Fork, but on the North Fork, certainly.
Fork. Yeah,
and we ran a number of rivers in California, but also a number of rivers in Oregon. And my wife and I were spending so much time in Oregon. We said it really makes a lot more sense to live up here and then have somebody manage our business in California. So we did that until.
And when did you move up to Eugene, Tom?
We moved up to Eugene actually in 1979.
Oh, wow.
So
be honest, that was the same year I was there. Believe it or not, I was there from 78 to 80 at Eugene.
We've been here certainly longer than anywhere else, and certainly consider ourselves Oregonians. Our children were born here, grandkids were born here, and I suspect Oregon sadly is not a business-friendly state. There have been a number of things in the last couple of years that have discouraged us a great deal, but I think with the grandkids being here, unless everybody voted and decided to pick up and move, we're pretty much here through the end game.
Now, you went to Davis and you studied science and renewable resources. Tell me a little about that. What led you to that
degree, and has that been an important part of kind of who you are over time in terms of
when I was in
about the environment?
Oklahoma, I worked for a couple of veterinarians, and I absolutely wanted to be a vet. When I came and saw that there were great programs in California, that was neat. So I started pursuing that. Unfortunately, my counselors did not tell me of related work experience, of which the Oklahoma days were not relevant.
Right.
So I got into my senior year in college with absolutely no background experience to move into the vet school. And so once again, the word pivot, I decided, well, I'm going to check out some soil sciences here, renewable natural resources, which was big in the mid 70s.
Sure.
And I went in that direction, and I really, really developed a love for rivers because I was doing vegetation studies along the American River from literally Sacramento up to Lake Tahoe.
Yeah.
And really, really got into the river aspect of it. And I started the Whitewater rafting program at UC Davis.
Right.
And while I was still in school, I started Sierra Whitewater expeditions and would do that on the weekends and school during the week. And so it just kind of was a natural evolution.
Real passion of yours, it sounds
exactly.
Like. Do you still raft? Do you go out and do that and take the family out? Or
we actually have a raft hanging in the factory.
I love it.
We have a winch, and we load it up and take it up, and we have a nice bay door back there. So when we're ready to go, we back the trailer in,
it's all set,
drop the raft on it, and away we go. We do company trips, certainly still do private trips, fishing, that type of thing. So yes, certainly not like in the college days or in the full-time rafting days, but we do still go out.
Yeah. Well, the Strapworks, of course, is founded, as we said in the bio, based on the rafting industry. I think that's how you began the supply. Tell us a little bit about what came up to that. Were you working in another job prior to founding Strapworks? And was it industry related, or did you pursue something in the soil science and renewable natural resources area for a while before you got into being an entrepreneur?
Prior to the rafting, I was basically a teenager, so I had some typical part-time jobs, fast food and a drive-in dairy, that type of thing. And when we went to Davis, I got a job with the university in both the outdoor center as well as the plant sciences department. And so I was out helping develop a new strain of tomatoes, which would taste good on the table, but still be pickable by machine.
Oh.
And then when I wasn't doing that, I was in the outdoor department sewing tents and parkas. And I had developed, when I was still in Southern California and going to junior college, I had bought a very small raft and was rafting up on Sespe Creek, which is a wild trout fishery just north of Los Angeles, an amazing area, condor sanctuary. And so we would go up there, and we were kind of getting into floating and what have you. So when I moved up north, I took that little raft up on the American River. It was in full flood. A ranger at the park told us, oh, it's okay, if you fall in, no big deal. Well, as I said, it was in full flood.
Wow.
We lost our raft.
Oh, goodness.
My wife got wrapped around some willows that were in underwater in the high water.
Oh, no.
And it was a traumatic day.
Yeah. I can imagine.
My wife didn't get back on the water for a long time, but I wanted to go the next weekend. I wanted to figure out what I had done wrong, fix it, and get going.
Right.
Well, at that time in whitewater rafting's history, most gear was being tied into the raft with ropes, cords, these types of things. Straps were not really a thing at that time.
Got it.
And so I started looking around for a better way. I stumbled upon cam buckles and heavyweight polypropylene webbing and started making black straps because black webbing was readily available. And people said, those are great. Can we have some? So I'd make them for other folks. Pretty soon everybody's arguing over whose straps are whose. And that's when I came across the idea to make different colored straps, basically so different people wouldn't argue over whose were whose. Mine are yellow, yours are green, the other person's white.
That's great.
But then after that, we kind of developed it further and started then color coding for length. Because if you had all black straps and you wanted a 2-footer, how do you tell which one is a 2-footer?
Right.
Without going through all 30-foot straps, all 30 straps. So we then started color coding by length, and we're still the only strap manufacturer in the U.S. that will make any strap, any length, any color. And today we've been very fortunate to be involved in the sublimation technology. And so we can literally print not only any color, but any pattern. We can even print photographs on the webbing. Wow. And have done so. So we do some pretty crazy things, do a lot of branded stuff. But initially, quite frankly, right out of high school, I went into working at the colleges that I was at the time. And then while I was in college, I got involved in rafting.
Right.
And so when I got out of college, that became my full-time job.
Yeah.
My degree.
But it was about 20 years though until you founded Strapworks. So were you doing it as an other entity?
Well, no, we were actually making product as Strapworks. We were first making product as Sierra Whitewater, and that's because that was the name of the rafting company. Right, it just seemed natural to call the gear part of it that as well. But in the 90s, we decided that it should be separated.
Okay.
And so we went with Strapworks, and then in 2000 is when I developed our website, and then it became very necessary to really start enforcing the brand, encouraging the brand.
So you've been doing this close to 40 years, not just 20 years.
Oh, absolutely. No, we've literally been making straps since 1975.
Yeah.
And so that's 45 years now. And
now, other than the rafting industry, who else do you supply straps to, Tom?
Literally every industry on the planet.
Yeah.
We sell to, like I say, the emergency services. So EMTs, fire suppression, things like that. NASA is a client. Cirque du Soleil, major movie studios, and literally any industry that has a need for a tie down. The neat thing about straps is that it's a cradle to grave industry. Mm-hmm, when you bring your baby home from the hospital, you're locking that baby in with a strap. That seatbelt is a strap.
Right. Yeah.
And as gross as it sounds, when you pass away, they lower your casket into the ground with straps.
With straps, that's right.
Now, the neat thing is that it's a little bit tacky to try to recover those straps.
Oh,
so
right.
Once the casket is in the ground, the straps are thrown in with it, and they are buried along with the casket. So
little known fact.
As long as people keep passing away, we will still keep making those straps.
You've got that industry. That's great.
Right.
And how many employees today, Tom?
We have 60 as of today.
That's great. And all in Eugene, or you have separate sales operations?
No, we're a one location operation. Yep. We do sell globally, and we actually have straps on the International Space Station. So we're an interstellar company.
I love that.
But we only have one location, and that's right here in Eugene.
Well, you're an entrepreneur from the word go. Tell us some of those early leadership and management lessons you learned, particularly in the early days in the 80s, and, getting things going to your own company, obviously, in the rafting industry and others there.
Well, the neat thing about rafting when you're in college, of course, is if you have $1 in your pocket, you're making it.
Right.
And so I did not have any business training, and certainly that contributed to the point when we experienced the theft of our funds and some of our resources, that we were not nearly as prepared as we might have been to recover from that. So the early days were kind of by the seat of our pants, and learned a lot by simply listening to my clients, what they liked, what they didn't like, and incorporating what was there. And of course, when I didn't have a trip on the river, I was working for other outfitters as well.
Of course.
So I always had my eyes and ears open.
Right.
What is that guy doing that I can incorporate? I am really, really big on looking around, and it doesn't have to be a competitor. I love taking factory tours. I love to see how people run their factories, and if there's something there, I don't care whether they're making plastic handholds or whether they're making cribs or bicycles. There's always something in a factory that can be adapted to almost any factory setting. And so we really, really look around. Now, since we went online, I've really kind of been forced to seek out more business knowledge.
Right.
Our first order, in fact, I made the website in the closet of my bedroom, and it was a vanity thing. My mother did not know I had it. Nobody knew I had a website except me, I thought. And a month later, when I went back in to work again on my website, there was an order, and I was utterly shocked. It was an order for one buckle, which I did not have. I had to go to Joann Fabrics and buy a buckle for $2 that I had sold for 85 cents. I shipped it in a rice-a-roni box. The client loved that. She thought I was great at recycling, but it's what I had. And so I asked my son, who was in high school at the time, I said, how is this possible? How did this person find me?
Find you, yeah.
And so he started teaching me about spiders and search engines and this type of thing. And he became involved in the computer end of the business. And from that point, we've moved on to where it's all computer based now.
What part of your business is online today?
Yeah, well,
almost all of it.
We have no retail presence other than people who buy from us and resell.
Right.
We do not have a store. We're thinking about changing that, but I respect retail people. That to me, that's harder than even what I do.
Sure.
And I'm here 10 to 12 hours a day, but retail just sounds like it's too hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so,
tell me about the first time you started managing people other than your direct family. What was that like?
Well, that was probably after our first move. As I mentioned, we started in our home, and we got away with that for about 3 years. I say we got away with it because we didn't have a permit to be running a business in our home.
Right.
And after a while with UPS and FedEx showing up, one of the neighbors complained, fair enough. And the city told us you have 30 days to find a business location.
Right.
And so
were you actually making the straps at home, like in your garage?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
I love it.
No, the warehouse was the garage, and my son's bedroom was the sewing area because he had moved out.
Okay.
And so we said, we'd love to have you back someday, but not now. So,
other priorities. Right.
Yeah. But they gave us 30 days. And very fortunately, we found a place in Eugene that had a shop attached to it, 3,000-foot shop.
Wow.
And so, and that particular area of town was known for cottage industries. There was a ceramic shop next door. The property we bought had been an automotive shop at one time and also an archery shop at one time. So we felt we could move in. My industry is extremely quiet. We don't make any noise. So we weren't disturbing anybody. And that's when we started hiring employees. When we got to that point, our first hire was 3 employees to do part of the office work and to be sewing. And it was fun at that time. Not that it isn't now, but it was just fun because there were just a small group of us.
Sure.
And I do remember at the time, my son had gotten into online gambling, which was legal at the time, online poker, I should say.
Right.
And there was a thing that was called the jingle that happened once a week. And it was $1 to buy in. And when you busted out, you could buy back in for $1. And so all these people were constantly playing. It happened at 3 p.m. Now, we didn't close at 3 p.m. except on Jingle Day. And we closed, and all the computers we had suddenly became online poker stations. But then the next big leap, we got an order from Toys R Us.
Oh, boy.
And they wanted to put a little net on every ladder they had in every store across the country.
Right.
And they had a supplier who could not meet their timeline. So they called us. We were asking for more money for the product. We negotiated a little bit. They paid more. We took less. And but I knew I was going to have an assembly line type setup to get this done in time. And we hired 6 people.
Wow.
And we told all of them that this is temporary. We have a contract. We're going to use you. But you know what? In about 8 weeks, we've got to let you go. And when the 8 weeks came around, actually it was about 5 weeks because we did finish the project early. And we kept 3 of them on.
Wow.
And it was great because 3 of them were okay for helping us with that, but they weren't the greatest employees. The other 3 were really sharp.
Yeah, found some
and
good folks.
2 of them are still with us today. So
that's fantastic.
That's how we started getting into hiring.
Yeah, that's great. How would you describe your company culture? You know, you kind of really have evolved it so much over the years. You've changed names, you've changed locations. What stayed consistent and what's changed over that period?
Well, what has stayed consistent is the family atmosphere. We like to say today that we've got about 55 foster children.
I love that, Tom.
They're all family, and there are times, quite frankly, when they come in and cry on our shoulder.
I was going to say, with all the responsibilities that come along with that.
Absolutely, yes, and so that we have maintained from day one. I always wanted to make it, how would I want to be treated by a boss? And that's how I'm going to treat my employees. I think what has changed has been a belief that I had to be the lowest priced. I remember in the rafting days, I had a Rogue River permit, and I wasn't filling any of my trips. I was only charging $200 for a 4-day trip.
Wow.
And I was still making some money. But I asked one of the other outfitters, I said, why do you think I'm not getting the business I want to get? And they said, you're too low.
You're too cheap.
Nobody believes that you can run a good trip at that price.
Wow.
So I doubled my price and sold out of my season.
Ha, there you go.
And that was a little bit of an awakening, although it still took me years to get beyond the discounting mentality.
Right.
And now, while we offer quantity discounts, we offer wholesale discounts, we still look at our products and we say, look, this product is worth this.
High quality.
And that's what we're going to charge for it. If everybody doesn't buy it, that's okay. We can't afford to have everybody buy our product. We could never be that big.
Right.
And so if everybody bought their belts from us, we would have to have, 50 factories this size to do that. So we're okay with some people that may think we're not right for them. But we also do about $8 million in business annually. So we do have quite a few people that think we're right in line.
Yeah, that's great. So that's what stayed the same. What's changed over the years?
Well, certainly my personal activity with each of my employees.
Yeah.
I have some employees that I work with every day. Obviously, my COO, HR, CFO, the managers. But on occasion now, when we hire somebody, it may take me a couple of weeks to learn their name.
Right.
And that was certainly never a problem in the past. So the size of the company has dictated that I can't be into as many things as I want to be into. And I think it has defined my role as a CEO in a much more traditional fashion.
Right.
In that if I can't do everything, which I can't, then what do I do? Well, you do CEO stuff. Right. I'm supposed to provide the vision. I'm supposed to provide the guidance, and I'm supposed to provide, hopefully, the money. And so that has changed a great deal. I do spend a lot more time examining what we're doing, why we're doing it, what we should drop, what we should add, and kind of arm wrestling and arguing with the people I trust in the business as to where we're going and what we're doing.
First generational CEOs like yourself. And not saying this is the case with you, but it often happens that they can be very much of a micromanager, right? Because they're used to doing all the business for many years. It was you and Donna. And
well, I did do it. I did
Absolutely.
absolutely everything. I cut the, I bought the webbing, I cut the webbing, I sewed the webbing.
You used the webbing.
Some of my employees look at me and say, "How does he know to sell that well?" Well, I've been doing it for 45 years. I just don't do it every day now.
So how do you kind of resist the temptation of micromanaging others? When is the right time to get involved and when is the right time to stand back?
Well, rafting helped me in that because we did rafting schools, whitewater schools.
Sure.
And typically as you're floating down the river and they're about to hit a rock, you don't really want the raft torn in half. So sometimes you'll step in. And inevitably they would always say, "I was about to do that." Well, no, they weren't. So there comes a time when you have to let the raft hit the rocks.
Right.
So that they understand you weren't paying attention, you weren't looking.
This is what
happens. You've got to do this. So it's the same here. There are times when we have to let people sew a strap wrong so we can say, why didn't you look at the prototype? Why didn't you look at the fabrication notes? And so it's really... it's not that difficult sometimes to step back as long as it's not a critical situation. And then because we do have a very, very good management system here, it's really my job to go to their manager.
Sure.
And say, you got to get on that person. We have a pretty strict, both from the top down and from the bottom up, my employees can come and talk to me at any time. I'm not in a closed office. I'm in an open area. I can be approached at any time. And they always ask, "Are you busy?" And my answer is, "Of course I'm busy, but I will stop what I'm doing and talk to you."
Right.
But they know if they have an issue that can be handled by their manager, it should be.
That's where they should
go.
And
if it can't be handled by the manager, they can go to the COO. And if it can't be handled there, they can go to HR. And finally, if all of those people have failed them in some way, they can come to me.
You're the last court of appeal.
Yeah. The opposite is true. I don't need to go talk to an employee. If there's a department that is underperforming, I'll talk to the COO. He'll talk to the manager. They'll talk to their staff. And so I think it's my job more or less to walk around the factory, to keep a smile on everybody's face. This morning, for instance, we passed out pumpkin and apple pies for all of our employees for Thanksgiving.
Nice. Yeah.
And so, basically, visitors to our factory, they notice two things. The first thing they say is, "My God, it's so clean here." Well, sewing is a pretty clean industry. You just sweep up and you're good to go. And then they said, "And all your people are smiling."
Yeah.
We try very, very hard today. When we bring a new person on, I say, I have two goals. I want you to stay here a long time, but I also want you to get up every morning and be happy that you're coming to work.
Right. Well, tell me about that. You're up to 60 employees now. It sounds like your business is doing well despite the pandemic, or maybe because of, and you've continued to grow. What do you look for when you're making bets on the people you invest in and hire, Tom?
This industry does not have, if you're going to be an electrician, you go do an apprenticeship.
Get your certification.
But not in sewing. We have a lot of people here, both men and women, that have done sewing in the past. We've got guys that are leather workers that come in and they're pretty good on the machines right away. And we have women who have done it, but very, very few people that come here have any experience with our automatic pattern tacking machines.
Sure. Right.
So we do an awful lot of training. Right. Now what we're looking at, much like we were in rafting, we're looking at personalities. You can teach anybody how to get from point A to point B on a river. You can't teach them how to be a guide.
That's right.
That almost has to be inherent. Yeah. Here, we can teach anybody to sew, but of course, as a lot of them, most employers should know, you can't teach people how to be a good employee.
Right.
They almost have to be, and then you can help them be better, typically. And that's what we focus on. We look, and unfortunately, a lot of young people nowadays have these starter jobs. They work here for a year, they go over here for 2 years, over there for 2 years, and we're looking at an employment record that is so checkered that, well, are you going to stay here for 6 months or a year or what? Because we don't want to spend the money training you if you're not going to be here. So we do look at that, and we look for people that perhaps got downsized, or the business went out of business or sold, but they were with a business for a long, long time, and they're looking now for their forever home, so to speak. They want to retire somewhere. They want to do it. I would say, quite frankly, our average age here is probably around 40.
Wow.
But we have a number of people who are in their early 20s. We have people who are in their 60s.
Yeah.
So it's all over the place, and we certainly give young people a chance, and we certainly have no problems with hiring older people. Yeah. It's not a physically demanding job. You sit down, you line up your strap, you push the button, the machine does the work.
Right.
And so stocking the shelves is more exhausting than sewing.
Yeah. Well, you obviously get involved in all of the hiring, I'm sure, for the people that report directly to you, but probably from time to time, down the line, but you probably don't put a lot of time into it. You got to trust your people to develop them. If you've got just 5 or 10 minutes with someone, what do you try to zero in on? What questions do you ask? What do you try to find out from them? If this is someone that's you've been asked to hire, or you've been asked to interview as part of the hiring process?
We always ask if they've been to our website. Someone who wants to work for us and hasn't been to our website, I am very leery about that. That means they're not curious at all.
Yeah, right.
They don't really know what we do. There's nothing wrong with needing a job. In fact, I used to ask all my rafting guides that, why do you want to be a rafting guide? And the ones that would say, because I need a job, I would hire before someone who said, oh, it looks like it'd be fun. It's not fun. It's hard work.
Yeah,
any job is hard work. So if people have been to my website and they seem to have a sense of what I'm doing, they've got a big leg up just right there. And then, of course, we will ask them, why did you leave your last job? And we do a lot of listening. I think a lot of people interview and ask questions. They just question.
Right.
We have a tendency to ask questions and then listen. We may say, please elaborate on that or give me some more details. We do have ex-felons here. We try to give that population an opportunity. Right. And quite frankly, it's turned out far more often than it hasn't. As I mentioned, seniors, if you will, veterans. And we have some folks that are on the autistic scale. We try to work with alternative populations as well, because they, quite frankly, they have a tendency to be very, very loyal.
Right.
They come to a job, they are getting self-satisfaction out of it. And as a result, they're doing the best job they can for you. Yeah. And they're very loyal and they stay around.
Yeah, great. Sounds like you've got very high retention rates. What's kind of the average years of employment of your employee across the
right now? It's really approaching 5+ years.
That's great.
We've got several people that are in the 10 to 13 year range, and then we do have, because of this year with our growth during the pandemic, we probably have about a dozen new people that are still in their first year.
Yeah.
We do hire, we don't hesitate to hire husbands and wives, sometimes mom and son, right. Maybe not, but being a family business, we're open to having other families as part of the operation.
We have a client out in Long Island in New York that has 500 employees, and they're a family business, third generation. And he's very proud to say we have 500 employees and 400 families.
All right. I love that.
Tom, you've been very generous with your time, but we always ask one last question to all our guests. And, what career and life advice would you give someone that maybe has their eyes on a corner office or like you, wants to become an entrepreneur and have their own business someday?
Well, certainly go for your dream. Now, my dream was not an $8 million company. I did
Making
very
straps.
much enjoy straps and wanted to be a strap maker, a fabricator, if you will. But at the same time, certainly pick something you like. I mean, there's the cliche. If you are working at something that you like, you'll never go to work a day in your life.
That's right. Yeah.
So from that point of view, certainly look in that direction. I would also say that we were a cash company, both to our benefit and our detriment, right up until the time when we needed to build our own factory.
Right.
And it was great not to be in debt. It was really great to go to a bank and say, no, I don't have a credit history, but here's what I have.
Right.
I have $300,000 in the bank as a down payment on a $500,000 property.
Yeah.
And
$1 million of orders
I have
in the
no
pipeline.
debt. I have $1 million in inventory, free and clear. I have $1 million in machinery, free and clear. And that's what I have. And the more you can stay out of debt, the better.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm jealous. I suppose people could call me jealous of these tech companies that haven't made a penny in their history and yet are valued at billions of dollars. I don't completely understand that. And
not
maybe
too many people do, Tom.
Maybe that's a class I missed in college. I don't know. But certainly, find something that gets you up every morning.
Yeah.
Like I say, I work 10 to 12 hours every day. I don't get tired of it. Some of my people tell me, go home, go do something else. And of course, when I play hard. We try to go to Hawaii every year. All of our vacations, we try to make tropical. We certainly have family get-togethers as much as possible. And but boy, if you can get up every morning and want to go to work, you're in the right area.
Yeah. That's great. Well, Tom Foster, CEO at Strapworks, thank you so much for sharing your journey into the corner office.
Well, thank you for talking with me today, Brant. And I hope you and yours stay safe throughout the rest of the pandemic. And let's hope that vaccine gets out as soon as possible.
Absolutely. And happy Thanksgiving to you and your family as well, just 2 days away.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to Into the Corner Office with Brant Hanley. We hope you enjoyed hearing our guest CEO story as much as we did. If you want to hear more CEOs reveal their journey into the corner office, please subscribe via iTunes and tell your friends and colleagues. For more information about Brant, Resource Options International, and the mighty middle market, visit www.goforroi.com. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode.